Not too long ago, we talked about the absolute best comic book covers of all time. So naturally, now we have to talk about the absolute worst ones. Hey comic book aficionados, this is Dante D, and welcome to the channel where we talk about comic books and other geek stuff. As always, if you're new here, please consider subscribing for new videos posted weekly on topics related to geek culture. Before we get to the video, I just wanted to say thank you to all my subscribers and all the viewers out there for your continued support. I really appreciate you coming and hanging out with me here every single week and talking about this medium that we love oh so much. So today, the all-time worst comic book covers. In order to have made this list today, the comic book has to have some sort of innuendo that is in really bad taste that publishers didn't catch, or they just simply have really bad art. Unfortunately, since these comic books have such bad covers, I don't have any of them in my collection. So what I'm going to be showing you today are some stock images, and then I'm also going to talk a little bit about them and why they are really bad covers. Although I don't think these covers are going to need much explaining. I'm just warning you, they're really bad. So let's get into this list. Prepare to cringe or laugh, depending on your sense of humor. Okay, so let's get into our first book here, and no surprise that this one is here. This is Captain America, obviously, and I just want to say I'm not going to be mentioning the artists' names on these comic book covers just because I want to kind of save them the embarrassment, but this one I think we all know is by Rob Liefeld. It is a very well-known bad cover. Anything that Rob Liefeld did on Captain America was like just really bad. And I don't really think I need to explain why this cover is bad. I mean, the art is just terrible. I don't think there's anything aesthetically pleasing about this cover. There's like a random doll face, random arm hanging out of nowhere. Somebody get this man some laxative because he has the worst case of constipation I think I have ever seen. I mean, I don't want to hate on Rob Liefeld too much. I actually did a video on Rob Liefeld. I'll put the link in the description. But I actually do like some of Rob Liefeld's earlier stuff from the late 80s and early 90s. But I just think by the time he did this book, he had just fallen so far from grace, if he ever even was in grace. That I guess depends on your opinion. And the torture continues with this Captain America piece here. I don't know how publishers even allowed this to get printed. Like, this one is a very well-known bad piece of art here. Like, his anatomy is just so exaggerated to the point where it doesn't even look good. Like, if this is what Captain America looks like, Chris Evans, I'm sorry, you have some work to do. Oh look, and the novelty size anatomy continues with Youngblood #5 by, you guessed it, Robbie Liefeld. Okay, so maybe I lied. Maybe he did have some bad work in the early 90s, because I think Youngblood #5 was published in the early 90s. Again, like, Rob Liefeld, he's an artist that he had his moments. I personally think he had his moments as a good artist, but he certainly has had way too many moments as a bad artist, and this, I think, is one of the reasons why he is one of the most hated artists in the comic book world. I mean, I don't hate him, but I know a lot of people out there who absolutely despise the man. Fantastic Four number 375. At first sight here, you could see this is a holographic cover, and the reason why I think this is a bad comic book cover is just, it gives you a freaking headache. Like, just staring at this thing, if you stare at this cover long enough, you will get a splitting headache. Trust me, I've tried it, and it just hurts to look at it. If you could get past the holographic cover and you look at the art, at first glance, you're like, okay, it doesn't look too bad. But, I mean, Sue Richards here is just way too over-sexualized. I don't think I've ever really seen Sue Richards dressed like this. I didn't see her dressed like this until the 1990s. Like, I don't know if that was really that necessary. Next up, we have Wolverine Revolver #1, which was a one-shot, and thank all that is good and decent that this was a one-shot, because I don't know if I could have handled any more of this art. Seven Hells, is this a bad cover? Just look at Wolverine. He looks like a Neanderthal. The bat thing in the background looks terrible. Wolverine's proportions are off. Like, I'm not an artist, but even I know that the proportions here are pretty bad. This is terrible. Like, was this meant to look like this? Who would look at this and say, that's a nice cover? The Savage Namor number 26 in the tradition of Rob Liefeld's over tension and over flexing and over gritting. Like, if Rob Liefeld's Captain America had a bad case of constipation, this guy is definitely passing some really giant gallstones. What the hell? He just looks like he's in pain. Not to mention the bad case of TMJ he's going to get from gritting his teeth like that. And he kind of looks like what the baby would look like if Tigra and Kraven the Hunter were to ever have a kid. I don't know. Do you like this cover? I mean, some people might like this cover, but I just think it's terrible. Green Lantern number 22. And I know what you're thinking. Different time, different mentality. But gosh, is this ever freaking hilarious to look at almost like 70, 80 years later. Did they really have to put this on a comic book cover? Like, this just looks absolutely ridiculous. I think if I were walking around in the 1940s, I probably would think this would have looked stupid at that time too. I got a little chuckle when I look at this. Not only because you have like some sort of like humanoid tree slapping some fat guy's ass, but you have Green Lantern in the background who can't seem to contain his laughter. I'm with you, Green Lantern. And the butt spanking continues with Superboy number 75. I don't think we really have to talk about this one much more. SHAZAM number 6 from the 1970s. This is a cover really gone wrong. They were going for like the warm atmosphere where Uncle Shazam picks up all the kids and reads them a bedtime story, but just look at this. This is a really unsettling cover, and it's very creepy. Like, the kids in the picture, they look like something out of a horror movie. Like, this cover, just to look at it, just gives me the creeps. I just think this is terrible, and I can't believe this actually got printed. Okay, Action Comics number 457. This is just wrong. I understand what they were going for here, but how did this get up to the publisher and he thought that this was okay? I mean, you have a boy lying face down, crying, and Superman getting undressed. I'm thinking you don't have to have your mind in the gutter to see the sexual deviance and the absolute disgusting innuendo that this cover has. Like, I hate this cover. Do you have this in your collection? If you do, you're a creep. No, I'm just kidding. But if you do have this in your collection, what do you think of this book? Let me know. Okay, and here is where things get a little weird. All right, so we have a little kid holding a bundle of wood and a actor staring over the kid very creepily who just happens to look a little bit like David Hasselhoff, which I just think is hilarious. And he's just standing there, like, next to the wood perfectly. Like, this gives new definition to Morning Wood, seriously. This is just one of the worst covers ever. This is just went way wrong, and I don't know how they did not pick up on how wrong this cover looked. Wonder Woman number 101, which is really, really sad. I feel so bad for Wonder Woman. I love Wonder Woman, but she is probably the worst victim of phallic comic book covers of all time. Over the years, Wonder Woman has been so abused on comic book covers. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen a Wonder Woman cover, especially in the earlier years, where she is portrayed with something that looks a lot like a phallus. And it doesn't help that this phallic-looking shark is just really huge, and Wonder Woman in the picture looks... doesn't look like she's struggling there. It kind of looks like she's in ecstasy a little bit, you know? Like, it's a wee bit disturbing. And the Sausage Fest continues with Wonder Woman number 68, depicting a phallic torpedo heading for a Wonder Woman who's tied up. This is just wrong in so many ways. Like, not only the torpedo that's heading towards Wonder Woman also does not look very receptive to this phallic looking torpedo coming towards her. And on top of it, she's tied up. Okay, so now we have a giant red phallic looking torpedo and we have a bondage undertone. So wow, this is a lot of fun. And yet another phallic cover with Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. number 34 from the early 1990s. Seriously, they could not think of a better design for a gun, and it doesn't help that Nick Fury is on the floor with his legs spread open, and he looks like he's in pain, and he looks like he's not wanting to be threatened by a giant penis-looking gun, or cannon, or whatever that is. Holy dick slap, Batman! It's Black number 176. I'm judging by the French on the side that this was some sort of, like, comic book produced in, like, Belgium or France, or... Please don't tell me this was produced in Canada. As a Canadian, I really take issue to this type of literature being distributed in the country of my birth. But But seriously, like, I'm sorry, I had to stop rolling because I had a 12-year-old moment where while I was talking about this comic, I could just started laughing uncontrollably. But seriously, did not catch that this looked wrong. Okay, and as much as I would love to sit around all day and show you guys pictures of things that look like dicks, I'm going to move on to other bad covers here. So next we have The Incredible Hulk, number 355. At first glance, you're probably like, okay, this isn't too bad, but the guy who has the Hulk immobilized by some sort of gay flag-looking rainbow energy beam is saying, "Don't struggle, Hulk. I just want to give you your wildest dreams." Okay, easy there, Marvel. I know you guys are really, really progressive and you're all about diversity, but I think this cover here was just in bad taste. And it really looks like the Hulk is not happy to have his wildest dreams fulfilled by this particular gentleman depicted in this photo. Action Comics number 58, the famous bad cover in which Superman says, "You can slap a Jap," with war bonds and stamps. But still, the fact that they have slap a Jap on one of their comic books, yeah, that's a little cringeworthy. But again, this one, I think we can kind of just put it off as it was a different time, different mentality. They were at war with the Japanese. Let's just all forgive this here. Little Lulu looks very surprised to have a very rotund gentleman behind her on her tricycle. Obviously, this has a sexual assault connotation to it, which is very cringeworthy. I'm sure little kids that were reading this comic book back in like the 50s didn't pick up on this, but I mean, looking at this as an adult, you're probably thinking like, okay, that's wrong. And if you think comic book publishers learned their lesson with the Little Lulu cover, you could see that they didn't with this Alf cover here, which was published, like 40 years later or something like that. This Alf cover here is probably one of the better known comics on this list. It is the infamous quote unquote rape cover. And as you can see, this cover here is just wrong. But I mean, I know for sure if you're trying to pick this book up right now, it's actually rising in price. I don't know why people actually want this book, but it's actually gone up in price. So if you want this book here, you're be expected to spend like $50 or more. Oh, Betty, Archie would do anything for you. He would even beat off 3 other guys for your heart. All these years later, looking at this cover, you just gotta laugh out loud. I mean, Betty's saying, "Archie, did you have any trouble rescuing me?" And Archie says, "I sure did, Betty. I had to beat off 3 other guys." And I mean, you see the guys in the background that, have stars around their heads. So, obviously Archie beat them up or whatever, but it's just really funny. Okay, and I think this one here is pretty self-explanatory. Giant size man thing. I I was laughing pretty hard at this one, but also part of me actually kind of wanted to cry because I'm actually a pretty huge fan of the Man Thing. Like I have like the first 20 issues of Man Thing, and I just think it's great. But I don't think Marvel, when they released their giant size books in the mid 1970s, really thought through attaching giant size to a Man Thing comic. So I just thought this was hilarious. I mean, the art on this cover is great. It's just when you look at it and you see giant sized Man Thing, you're thinking about something else. Even if your mind is not in the gutter, mind you. Oh dear is all I can say about this comic book right here. You have a bunch of naked boys swimming in some sort of a pond. I presume they're naked since you see all their clothes in the background there, with Robin egging on Superman and Batman to join them. And Superman and Batman are like, what should we do here? Should we join them? Like, seriously, if you know anything about comic book history, you'll know that there was a psychiatrist in the 1950s named Frederick Wortham, who was attacking the comic book industry because he was saying that comic books had very, very harmful effects on youth. One of the things he was saying is that Batman and Robin were homosexuals, and he shows a bunch of different panels that have kind of homosexual undertones. But seriously, with covers like this, I can kind of see why he would kind of point in that direction. Time to do some ass grabbing with the Flash number 343. I know this cover was meant to be creepy and scary and, all tales from the cryptish, but you have this girl hugging the Flash and this this hand coming out of a grave that appears to be groping the girl's butt. So I just think this was this cover was not planned out very well. So that about does it for our list today. What did you think? Do you agree with this list? Are there some really bad comic book covers that didn't appear in this list that you think should have been? Please let me know in the comments. Until next time, this is Dante D signing off. Ciao!